the same. Because most of my family of choice are very intelligent people and they've put a lot of time and energy into figuring the answers out to that, which most people in my experience don't even really think about that. One of the most frustrating things I experienced with my family was when I went off to be a minister. There were certain topics that I couldn't wait for there to be a class about so I could find out what the correct answer to that question was. For example, gay people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the way I was raised, the truth is defined by the Bible. So I totally believed it's in there. I just wasn't able to find it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And the top of that list, for example, was actually the homosexuality thing at that point. And so when I went to classes and stuff, I was also like preparing a list of answers to those kinds of questions. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but when I did it because I wanted to be able to have that conversation again, but have the right verses lined up. You know, well, it says here, and I went to a Christian day school, so K through 8, I had Bible study 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I had a pretty good understanding of the Bible before I went to college and learned to speak Greek and Hebrew, and when it became even more significant, but it wasn't very insignificant before that. And there were, like my senior year, I reached a point where my understanding of the Bible was both broad enough and profound enough that I realized I knew what the Bible had to say, and that it didn't have anything to say about this topic. The verses that the people who had verses would use were very oblique, and you could interpret it the way they were interpreted it, but you also could interpret it other ways and not have that mean that being gay is the ultimate sin, and all kinds of spectrums in between there. And so then my approach was the verse I thought was out there isn't, and that in and of itself is a resolution of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if the religion you believe in believes all the truth is in the Bible and nowhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I went, okay, so that's how I approach this. I have them show me the verses that tell them this truth, and then I can analyze the verse with them, and they will see for themselves that this is a non-topic in the Bible. And so then I started talking to people when I felt I was ready. And my game plan was start with the why do you believe this, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And like the first 7 times I did that, 7 very different people, none of them knew the verses. Not even the ones that the people who use verses knew.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't know. They go, I don't really know. That's, well, how do you know that's true? Well, there was a sermon about it or something at church.
Somebody told me that this is what that says.
And I let them burble on for a few minutes about that and go, so some person who you don't even remember who, was usually the case, told you something that involves taking the rights away from other people, and you just totally accepted it without doing any research on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's largely where that conversation ended, because either they fall back into that defensive mode and would try to bend the conversation somehow so that it was about something they actually had verses for, or they would simply just walk away. You know, you're wrong. We don't need to talk about this anymore. Both of which is just the end of the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from my point of view. And so I learned over time that most people that believe this, and particularly I noticed a correlation between the more militant they are about it, the less they actually know.
Mm-hmm.
I realized these people, and the first time I got this step in was with my dad. I tried this out on my dad. I'd come to a point where I had stopped doing that with people because I didn't think there were actual people out there whose decision had anything to do with anything but what they were taught. But then I did my dad, and I was like, well, I'll go the extra mile for my dad. So I did it with my dad, and he was totally in that thing. And he said, "Oh, I don't know what the verses are," and blah, blah, blah. And I said, "So the one thing you accepted someone's advice, you should take away another person's rights, and you didn't need to check on that yourself." And he went, "Well, I don't know where that is." So I trotted some of the verses out for him to look at, and I realized as he's reading the verses and he's like thinking about it right then and there, that he hadn't thought about it. He had accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, why would a normally reasonable person accept something as unreasonable as taking away someone's rights and not look into it themselves? Why is that? That is weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
You would think the first thing you would do is go to your pastor and say, where does it say this? You know? And so I started asking my dad, I'm really surprised that you would support this kind of stuff, and yet you could have gone to see pastor and he could have told you right then and there where it is, and you'd know that seems weird to me. Why is that? And we talked a little bit about that, and we talked enough about it for me to realize that. And I realized that as I said it, which I wish I realized it 1 second sooner, and I wouldn't have said what I said, but what I said was, oh, so this actually has nothing to do with the Bible. This has to do with the fact that that topic of discussion makes you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a problem for us for a while. He felt I was being militant and attacking him. And
Amazing how people fear questions.
yeah, and especially often when you are questioning a belief that doesn't make sense, saying you're being militant is a door hatch for them to get out of the conversation. Well, you're being irrational about this, there's no point to keep talking about it, and then they don't have to deal with that. You know?
This is exactly what my father did.
Yeah. Oh, I've come to realize it's what most people do that have those kind of issues in life. And why was I telling this story?
So we got off topic,
Uh-huh.
which is okay. The question I actually originally asked you is what your family's words were.
Oh.
And you started to tell a story, and then I think you went down a tangent, which is fine.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so the question I meant to ask you, so for example, my family's motto is what Carol came up with, which is kind, funny, smart. Those are our words. And we tell our children, you know, if you're dating someone, the three most important things you can make sure of is that they're kind, funny, and smart. Now, my personal words that I have tried to live by is I do the hard things. And that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you probably have, because I've known you for so long, something that you could verbalize that is, you know, Blaine or Blaine and Nikki and Kevin, right? That is your thing. And that's kind of what that's where I originally asked the question and we went down a tangent.
Mm-hmm. What would my words be? You're back. Does that mean it's all fixed?
It means he's coming back tonight.